sometimes that I don't even know what I look like when I get on here. So, how's everybody doing today? It is Wednesday, Winsday. All right. If you don't know me, my name is Stacy Renee. I'm a mindset coach. I like to say a life coach, life on life's terms coach, because life is laughing. So, yeah, we're going to talk about today further about, we talked about earlier this week, the ACEs test, the ACE test, something that they give in America to, see how children from dysfunctional homes manage in adulthood. So that's our topic today. So if you like that's our topic today. If you enjoy this content, please smash that like and subscribe button so we can keep talking about things. You have a choice on what algorithms you're going to feed. I have a choice on what algorithms I'm going to feed. And with things being, good morning, Robbie. How are you today? With things being, kind of stressful these days, not kind of for some people, I worked a job last year and I haven't got paid from the final ending of that job last year. And, that's not my source. And I have to remember what my source is, but we can get deeply frustrated when we're struggling, and remembering that it's Wednesday, that no other job, no other person, no other being is your source. And so, remembering who we are. And that's what I get on here and set my intention to do every morning, is for us to be able to remember who we are and that we've gone through hard times before and that we're going to, grow through hard times again. What's the next question, Robbie? So, we're going to talk about this morning how childhood trauma shows up in adult relationships with anxiety and people pleasing. Sometimes we just don't feel like enough due to that childhood trauma. And I'll probably, when more people come on, talk about the ACE test more that we talked about Monday night. And then, we'll get into more so our topic this morning. So how childhood trauma shows up in adult relationships, anxiety, and people pleasing. We talked about Monday night how we may think that this is our reality because our adaptation, gained our survival skills. The thing is when we get to process these things, hi, Mahisha Kusma. So when we get to work on and realize that this is our survival skills, when we wonder why they act the way they act, that's where the people pleasing comes in, is when we're anticipating and strategizing what we can do for other people. Oh, today is fun so far. It's only 9 a.m. here where I am. So far, so good. But I'll be going out in public here shortly, and I'm sure it's going to be fine and divine. It does me so good. Sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed with things, because there's a lot of people feeling overwhelmed, to be able to get outside. I can be in my head, wake up in my head, have a dream, wake up in my head in the morning, and then I go outside and I feel so much better. So going outside, getting some fresh air can freshen our mind too. So it's about understanding our relationship with everything that's around us, but not letting that define us. So especially with people, places, and things. Hello, Mahisha Kushma. Nico Time Wave. Oh dear. Well, okay. Well, I don't understand that. We're going to get started, though. I have my notes here because I do like to look at your comment, and I appreciate your participation. And again, if any of this resonates with you, I encourage you to like and subscribe. And if you feel it might help somebody else, please share it. I'm going to be looking at your comments, but I'm also trying to stay on topic because I know some people rewatch this later, okay? So if it's something that deals with religion, politics, or my age that's off topic, I may not respond because I want to respect those who are listening, okay? And they're here for that topic. All right, here we grow. So we're going to talk about how the ACEs test and how childhood trauma can shape addiction and compulsive behaviors. But trauma doesn't just show up in addiction. A lot of us think once I get sober, once I get clean, once I lose some weight, once I don't gamble anymore, once I stay faithful, once I find love, once I do this, then we tend to stop doing the things that help us to recover. We feel like, I've got it. There's a plateau, right? I see that happen a lot of times, only for us to return to the same self-sabotaging behaviors. And then we are back at the place where we started before. And when we realize that this is an ever-evolving universe. Good morning, Don. It's good to see you this morning. Grinch was out a while ago, and I'll have to get up in a minute. I forgot I had some eggs on to boil. So I'll have to rush over there and turn those eggs off and get back over here, because we know I don't want to smell the eggs exploding. I don't. So in a minute, after we get started up here, so it's that only if. I often say that once we tackle one addiction, and there are so many different addictions, we're not just talking about drug and alcohol addiction, we're talking about all of them. There's work addiction, even work addiction, addiction to chaos. There's addiction to drama. There's addiction to the obvious. There's shopping addiction, because usually there's a transference of addiction. See, if we don't deal with what's growing on or going on the inside of us, then we are going to start looking for things outside of us, because we will look for relief as human beings. Shopping and work and chaos are yours. I love this, Don. I love you for owning, and that's the thing, is we can't save our face and our ass at the same time. A lot of us grow up with living by other people's expectations, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, is when that people please, and we're living up to other people's expectations and haven't even developed our own, right? So developing our own realizations, because a lot of our realizations that we're carrying is from other people's expectations. So when we can get, this is what I try to help people do, is to be comfortable in their own skin from within. Because when we're performing to get outside recognition, that when we do get it, we just still don't feel comfortable with, then that's a problem, right? That's a problem. So now that y'all stay here, I'm going to go turn those eggs off. I'll be right back. Hold on, I'm coming. All right. So, thank you for waiting. All right. Okay. As I said before, if I'm not going to respond to comments that aren't on topic today. Our topic today is how childhood trauma shows up in adult relationships, anxiety, and people pleasing. We don't talk about, for sure, we're not going to talk about things that aren't on topic, but we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics, and we don't talk about my age. And this ain't a dating site. So here we grow. Most of us stop using substances or began healing and realized that the patterns were still there. For me, I've shared that when I quit drinking, and I started working on myself, I learned how not to drink, but I still didn't feel whole, right? So then what happened is I was trying to fill that hole in my soul shopping. And we talked about that Monday night, that I went on to the shopping addiction after that. And that's what I'm talking about with transference of addiction. Okay. All right. So the anxiety was still there. The people pleasing was still there. And the fear of rejection was still there. And the negative self-talk, it was still there, even though if we quit drinking, if we quit a job, and we may go to another job, and we find that we're still dealing with the same thing. That's why it's so important to heal and to remember who we are at our core. Because sometimes we forget. I don't talk to people about becoming somebody else here. I talk to you all about remembering the wholeness, your worthiness that you were when you were born, because everything is programming, and we can choose our programming, or we can just fall into line. And so getting conscious, that's what the drinking helped me to stop doing, was to stop coming from my unconscious mind. But it took a while. Just because alcohol went away didn't mean that my mind got okay. Okay. So I had a rude awakening that I wasn't going to know things that I had never seen modeled and never learned. And that was an expectation that I had. And I got to deal with my expectations later in understanding my codependency. Because even when you're recovering from alcoholism, there's parts in the book that talk about how people are, sometimes the result of our woes. And we may have developed may have, we developed our relationships with people from birth, but when we were born, we were whole, we were divine. There's nothing wrong with you. A lot of times we take on the a lot of times we take on I'm not dealing with this. We take on identities, you know, to feel safe. And we talked about that Monday night is, what did I have to do to feel safe? Poke salad. I woke up and decided no more, and I dropped booze on the spot. That's good. That's good. For me, it wasn't that easy. For me, I grew up in addiction and alcoholism, and so it was normal. I talk about the desire to feel normal, and I still didn't feel normal, even though that was my normal. So when I got sober, I still thought then I'll be normal. And I still wasn't normal. It took to age 37. It took me to age 33. It did. Took me to age 33, but I had grown up in this. I was not, I knew where that was going to go if I kept going where I was going and doing what I was doing. I knew where it was going because I had gone to get my dad out of, they say, right, is jails, institutions, and death, because that's where we're going to go if we continue that self-destructive behavior. Yes, yes. So that's one thing, when we talk about forgiveness, is that, my dad gave me a strength by me being able to see that. And he didn't want me to turn out like him. And I didn't want to turn out like him, but I have that gene, or I had that social, that socialness. I knew, well, thank you, Poke Salad. That social, that was a learned behavior. So I talk here a lot about unlearning learned behaviors. Good morning, Pam. How are you doing? Y'all, if you didn't follow Pam before, we're trying to help Pam reach 1K on here. Have you reached it yet, Pam? Sometimes you do have to go no contact, Poke Salad. So if you haven't subscribed to Pam's channel, she struggled with food addiction. I think I can say that because if you watch her channel, you're going to know that. And so she has maintained a healthy lifestyle through exercise, through drinking her water, and choosing some healthier habits. So if you are struggling with the healthier habits, 62 away from 1K, y'all help Pam out. Help a sister out here. So please subscribe to her and see what. Definitely good addictions. Yes, there's so many addictions. So, yeah. So I don't know about you, Pam, but here's the things that we have to wrestle. And I talk about the transference of addiction, because even though, and I thought everything would be okay, like once we're skinny enough, oh, my whole world's going to be okay. Don't want to burden you, but my stepdad abused me when I was a child. Haven't hardly told anyone. Oh, Don, I'm so sorry. Were you here Monday night? I don't think you were. And I'm going to go over the ACE test. And the ACE test is designed to help us as children. It's an adult. Let me pull it up. It's the adult test, shopping addiction over here. I know, girl. The struggle is real. I went to shopping addiction after my alcohol. Hold on. Let me find this Google Drive and pull that ACE test up for us. Hold on. I got to rearrange y'all. Just a second. So I got to get into the drive and pull that ACE test up in case you didn't get to hear it the other night. It's Adverse Childhood Experience Questionnaire. And we don't just grow out of these adverse childhood experiences. Now he has prostate cancer. As was said earlier, sometimes these people, if you grew up with an addictive parent, they have narcissistic tendencies. When I was in my addiction, I had narcissistic tendencies. This is why the codependents and the narcissistics are drawn right there together, is because we are both looking for something better in the other person, and we find it, and we have those qualities. But also we have the negative qualities that match each other, about it's all about me, and having these expectations of one another. The codependent doesn't necessarily feel safe voicing what their expectation is, because they may have felt like they've never been heard before. Sometimes we were taught to be seen and not heard. That's our parents, transgenerational thing. And while some may not call it trauma, wow. Yeah, Pam knows a lot of stuff, y'all. So I'm going to go over this ACE test right quick. And I just want you to know that these things, just because you get in a grown physical body, they do not stop affecting you. They have trained your central nervous system to react to try to protect yourself. That's what your central nervous system does. It's in charge of the flight, fight, and freeze. So the question number one on the adverse childhood experience questionnaire is for adults. 1, did you feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you or take care of you? That's question number 1. Question number 2, did you lose a parent through divorce, abandonment, death, or another reason? Some of them just weren't emotionally available, right? And then 3, did you live with anyone who was depressed, mentally ill, or attempted to unlife themselves? 4, did you live with anyone who had a problem with drinking, using drugs, including prescription drugs? 5, did your parents or adults in your home ever hit, punch, beat, or threaten to harm each other? This does affect you when you see this. Did you live with anyone who went to jail or prison? Did a parent or adult in your home ever swear at you, insult you, or put you down? 8, did a parent or adult in your home ever hit, beat, kick, or physically hurt you in any way? Well, that's part of your central nervous system too, Dawn, is that we just numb ourselves down. That's that freeze part. So 9, did you feel that no one in your family loved or thought you were special? 10, did you experience unwanted, what you said, Dawn, contact, such as touching and intercourse, penetration, things like this? I don't know what I can say on YouTube. So, but if those things happened, we don't have to live with when we're talking about forgiveness, we're not talking about the person or perpetrator. We're talking about forgiving the power that has given off of our life, that nervous system of being numb, shutting down, the nervous system of distracting and doomsday scrolling and finding evidence of catastrophizing and evidence of your not being worthy, the evidence of the low self-esteem. And I know that sounds crazy, but we will look for that. We will look for proof that we're not enough sometimes. It's subconscious. No one would consciously do that. And that's what I'm talking about. Sobriety gave me a consciousness, but it didn't just start there. I had to unravel a lot of these things because they say if you answered yes to 4 questions on that test, then you have probably picked up some survival skills, and they're not bad. That's just your adaptation. It's not an indication of who you are. That's just an adaptation of what happened to you. I recommended this book. This is the book of the week. I should have a book of the week recommendation. It's called What Happened to You. It's by Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey. They say that if you go to the doctors and instead of saying what's wrong with you, because sometimes we get this imprint based on those kind of questions, those kind of experiences, that something is wrong with us is why this happened. We were weak when we were really just vulnerable. Vulnerability and weakness are different things. And for us to learn to know the difference, in the 12-step programs, we say the serenity prayer, and it's the wisdom to know the difference, because that journey turns into an adventure eventually, is that we get to see that we're not all these identities that we gave ourselves. That's why I tell people we're not talking about becoming somebody new. We're talking about returning to who our core essence and authenticity is. Your essence and authenticity, because you are good enough. It's these experiences that molded us into thinking that we're not good enough. These things that happen to us, and as a child, you can't leave, so you just have to adapt. And that's all that it is. And those turn to survival skills that no longer serve you in adulthood. When we can process them, we can turn them into tangible tools. So, I'm sorry you're feeling lonely and bad today. That's terrible. I feel for you. I'm being honest. I don't feel much upset at first. Oh no, I'm liable to lose sound. For some reason, my internet's messing up. Can y'all hear me okay? I'm trying to wait until it comes back or this leaves my screen. I'm going to have to go out and come back in again. I am sick and tired of this happening. I hope y'all can hear me. I can't see if y'all are hearing me. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? I probably have to go out and come back in because I had to touch my screen. Don, he told me my mom would leave if I told him I already had a dad I don't see. You can hear me? Can you still hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad I don't have to go out and come back in because for some reason my Wi-Fi got shaky. So thank you, Pam. Thank you, y'all. So what I just said earlier, if you just got on, is, many of us stopped using substances or began healing and realized the patterns were still there. These are patterns that we developed from that test. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. Thank you. So even in the healing journey, it doesn't just go away right away. Even when you realize what happened to you, it doesn't just go away right away. We have to process that pain because that pain is buried on top of our soul. Your soul is the core essence and puts you back at your childlike self. Your childlike self, not childish. Sometimes we should on ourselves because there's still this inner child. And a lot of people like to think the inner child is woo woo or woke or whatever, but it's there. And people were operating with these different skill sets from that inner child. What the child learned, how to survive, because some things were scary. Some things were not acceptable. They just weren't. But it isn't who you are. It was the sick person. So you can forgive the sick person or not forgive the sick person, but we do need to forgive the power that we gave what they did to us over us when you were an innocent child. Because they didn't, I always tell my survivors, you didn't lose your innocence. They are a perpetrator. You were an innocent child. That's the thing, is you are innocent. You didn't do anything wrong. So trauma is not what just happened to us. Trauma is what our mind and body learned to do in order to survive what happened. The behaviors that helped us survive childhood follow us into adulthood because that's who we think we are. That's just who I am. We'll dismiss that. But if who I am is not making me happy, we may say they're not making me happy. But if I'm really going to internalize that later, I know I did at some point, it's what am I doing wrong? Why is this happening to me? Look at what the effect of having no childhood. I know, right? And sometimes that's why I say that I work, that as a mindset coach, my specialty is addiction recovery, codependency, and grief, because sometimes we have to grieve the childhoods that we didn't get to have, right? So sometimes we wished it would have been another way. We might have wished we were in another family. We might have wished that things were going to go another way. And we may be grieving that without knowing that we're grieving that through our adulthood because we weren't taught that our feelings mattered. So even grief did not matter for a child. Sometimes adults grieve so much. I lost a child and I still had a child. So when I lost my child, I had to make sure that I didn't stay so focused on my loss that I didn't notice my child that was right there in front of me. Because sometimes that happens is when people learn to grieve, they learned that martyrdom with grief, because a lot of people didn't talk about a lot of these things in the past. So sometimes if we're not liking the way that our life is, which survival skill am I using today? Because we will be gathering evidence of our, if we feel unworthy, and we may not say, I feel unworthy. We may feel like people are being mean to us. We may feel like there's a villain. I know, darling. I know. People do feel dirty. I've worked with people who have struggled with weight loss journey. And some of them, when they had lost the weight, because they use the weight as a protective barrier. And when they lost the weight, and then sometimes there's loose skin. Most of the time there's loose skin. But when they get the loose skin, and when they get the loose skin removed and they're small again, they feel very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. And so we have to process that. I asked them, if they wrote a letter. But in this book, The Body Keeps the Score, another book, he talks about when children, and what happens is when this happens to a child, they lose their voice. So we usually work with EFT, the emotional freedom technique, tapping, because sometimes they write a letter. Most of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10, when I ask them if they wrote a letter to the perpetrator, they tell me no, because they don't have the words. It's confusing. So what we do is the tapping exercise, which Grinch hates, by the way, but we do the tapping exercise because it starts off very emotional at first, but we process the emotions through, you know, that spiral. Because we learn to make up a story about ourselves, Don, that we were dirty or something like that, and we're not. You're innocent. That was a perpetrator was dirty, but you're not. You were a child, and children can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. And that's reinforced, by some of these. Davina, I'd prefer us to stay on topic today because the ones that are here are joining pretty much for that topic. Is it relatable? Emotions? Yes. Rodolfo, you are fat as hell. I got a profile on 5 different Chevy Chase. Okay. Ask yourself, what survival skills am I using today? Did you become? See, because we morph into these characters, this is why I tell you that we aren't becoming anybody else here. You're returning to your essence and authenticity and your innocence. So sometimes we become, sorry, my neighbors have a blender or a grill or something running. I might have to close the door. Anyway, so you may become the peacemaker, learning to avoid conflict to stay safe. The adult patterns of this is the fear of confrontation, the fear of conflict and confrontation. Okay, thank you, Davina. You were about 5. Yeah, there's nothing you could do, darling. You were innocent. You didn't have any play a part in that. Fear of confrontation is an adult pattern. Over apologizing. I work with many people who apologize and do these kind of things. They're apologizing for just breathing. Oh, I'm sorry. We can all catch ourselves doing that because part of that is learned language. See, this is the thing, is that from 1 to 12, that language even that we learned imprints on us. So over apologizing, suppressing our needs. We may want or need something, but be, thinking that we're not going to get it. We already may have that made up. I have the opposite. I can't eat and have been anorexic. Oh, I went through that a little bit. I had an eating disorder. I was not clinically anorexic. Hold on a minute. Good morning, Mama. So I wasn't clinically anorexic, but I grew up in addiction, as was said. So I just don't know if you're going to relate with this or not, Don. So the thing is we don't talk about religion and politics or my age on here, guys. So we're not going to keep this going. I'll have to put you in timeout if you try to keep that conversation going. But I do always set an intention in the morning that what I say is going to help somebody else. So I'm talking and addressing Dawn right now. So Dawn, I grew up and my dad struggled with addiction. Food addiction was an addiction too, and so Dad got up to 300 pounds. So when I was a teenager, oh, Rodolfo, we're not doing this. I'm going to put you in timeout if you keep talking crazy, okay? So as a teenager, my dad, thank you, Pam. As a teenager, my dad would gain and lose weight. He got up to 300 pounds. And then he would lose weight and he would have loose skin. He would lose a whole nother person, right? And so then, and my dad was a handsome man. My dad was very handsome. Mom, would you stop it? You better not be up on here talking about my age. Not you even. Mm-mm. So my dad was very handsome. So, see, don't be saying throw it off comments like that, Mama. I lose. So I hurt his feelings very badly. And I'm always praying today because sometimes my daughter likes me. Sometimes she don't, because when your parents tell you, wait till you're grown, and, but I wrote a note one time and I was partying. I was a teenager using drugs, partying, eating X-Lax, Dawn. I was eating X-Lax. I was taking over-the-counter diet pills. I was also doing Blue and Clears, Black Mollies, and Pink Hearts, Lucky Charms of diets. And eating one Bama pecan pie a day because I didn't want to get big like my dad. I even put a note. My friends would always say, my family owned a donut shop. So my friends would always say, Stacy, bring us some donuts, bring us some donuts. So I bagged them up some donut holes once. I'm not proud of these behaviors, but I have to own it. I ain't going to talk about your age either, Mama. So I would, had this bag and I wrote a little note in there. If you keep eating this, you're going to get big like my dad. And guess what happened? With my high self, I left the donuts at the donut shop, and my dad went in to make the donuts at 2 in the morning and saw that note in the bag, and he was just crushed. He was hurt. Yep. I used to think I wasn't going to have a donutless day in my life. Anyway, so I went from food addiction to drug addiction, just like my dad, because that's what my dad did. And then I went from drug addiction to love addiction, codependency, because that's what, that's the learned behavior. So codependency, food is used as comfort and punishment to my ex. Food time, always a war zone, put me off food. He's got a lot of power in your life, Dawn. I encourage you to get this codependent stuff because he's got a lot of power in your life. And I want you to have your power because you are an amazing woman, and I know how that feels. I know how that feels. And you deserve to be able to eat, nutrition, eat like eat like a normal person. What I do is I eat like a boiled egg in the morning and some fruit. And then for lunch, I have a big meal. And then for dinner, I may have something small, like that, because I'm an intermittent faster. If I wouldn't have got pregnant with my kids, I wouldn't have learned how to eat right. But I had gestational diabetes because I quit drinking when I was pregnant, and I didn't realize how much sugar alcohol had in it. And so I craved sugar. And so then when I went to take that diabetes test, because I was getting big as a house real quick, and I went to take that diabetes test, and I'm small framed, so my pancreas was not getting the sugar filtered through. So I had gestational diabetes. And they told me later if I had to watch my weight because later I would have diabetes if I, put more weight on my pancreas. So anyway, then that switched to love addiction. Then from love addiction, I manifested a husband and 2 kids, but I still had alcohol addiction because there was still this stuff underneath, Dawn, that was eating at me. When we say stuff is eating at us, isn't that interesting how it can go with food addiction or the eating disorders? What's eating at me? Ask Shay. Thank you for being here. I appreciate that. So what we learn is to play these roles in the home, and you're probably playing a role now with that person. And I'm not saying that in a bad way because I learned to bend myself into a pretzel to please people. I have my faults. I'm not perfect. I know there's nothing wrong with you, darling. We all have faults. So, yeah. Rodolfo, there's somebody for everyone. We all have our faults. But the thing is a lot of times in our ego, we're trying to hide our faults. So we may overcompensate. I'm trying to speak slowly. I'm even from Texas, actually. So I kind of speak a little slowly. Oh, okay, Mom. Wait, it's kind of cool here today. Anyway, I'm talking about our patterns. The peacemaker. These are the ways that we may show up in our lives without realizing this. Okay. So the peacemaker learned to avoid conflict to stay safe. Adult patterns are fear of confrontation. I've been there. I was afraid of conflict and confrontation for a while. Over apologizing, suppressing needs, keeping the peace at your own expense. See, this is when we don't consider ourselves and our own feelings. Sometimes in people pleasing, we say yes to things, we end up overwhelmed, and then we feel like losers because we can't remember what we're supposed to do because we said yes to so many things. And then we label ourselves that because you're not, because the reality is in this overcompensating, you're really capable, but we don't accept our capability. That's not what we're focused on. We're not saying I am capable. We're saying that I need to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. Okay, so here's the perfectionist. The perfectionist, you learned that mistakes were unsafe. This is when you come from a household where it was really critical. And if you made a mistake, you were deeply chastised and your feelings were deeply hurt. And instead of us learning to say, my feelings are hurt, we learned to pretend like our feelings didn't matter. We learned our feelings didn't matter. So we built, thank you for the hearts, we built a wall around ourselves, is what we did, of that hurt. Every time we got hurt, and this what happens is what a lot of people don't realize is your body is constricting as a little child when you get hurt. You're going, we start holding our breath. That's why at the end of these meetings, we always breathe because we forgot how to breathe. And so we're running on empty a lot of times because we're running. That's part of that flight and fight, that we're running, trying to be perfect, trying. I hear so many people say, I'm trying, and I was too. So we learned mistakes were unsafe. Those adult patterns are overthinking, high anxiety, fear of failure, people pleasing through achievement, harsh inner critic, and you may believe your worth is tied to performance. And here's the thing, is that even when you're performing and overperforming and you're totally capable, when somebody compliments you, you may want to cry like me. You may want to hide under a chair. You might think it's a backhanded compliment because we're running on the fear that what we're doing is not enough. And so that's our perception. That's not somebody else's. But sometimes in codependency, we don't know the difference between our own perceptions and somebody else's. So you may believe your worth is tied to your performance if you're the performer. The rebel. I've been the rebel too, y'all. I was definitely a little rebel because when I learned being good didn't matter, I tried to be bad to get attention. I wanted my dad's attention, Dawn. Somebody here the other night was saying they wanted their dad's attention or their mom's attention, and I wanted my dad's attention, and I never felt good enough in the good stuff that I did, so I started being bad. I dated guys that wore the t-shirts that had the good times band on it. You can tell how old I am by that. The good times band on it that said, I'm the one your mother warned you about, And they would come in the donut shop and my dad would be looking at them like, giving them the look. They'd all tell me about the look. Anyway, I turned into the rebel. Let me know if y'all relate. You learned control felt suffocating or unsafe. So the adult patterns are authority issues, pushing people away, impulsivity, resistance to vulnerability. It don't hurt. It don't hurt. You're right. Self-sabotage. When we learn to dissociate from our feelings, we learn that, self-sabotage when life gets stable. So sometimes when people have when things are peaceful and they're hoping for the best but expecting the worst, they will, that's what I do, cry. Good. I'm glad you are able to cry. Wanted attention and never got it. I know. You were a rebel too? So what we do is we choose more familiarity than consistency because they were emotionally unavailable. Hey, John London, it's good to see you this morning here. So where you are, it's probably a little bit in the afternoon, 3-4 o'clock. Never went to school for 6 weeks. Got with the wrong crowd. Yes, girl. I hear you. One time I did really great in American history. And then I wouldn't go all the time. I didn't go to classes. I skipped school a lot, especially in high school. But I got good grades in American history. But then I got my report card and I got it meaning incomplete. So I go to him and I'm like, hey, I got all A's and B's. How come I get an I? And he says, because you were absent for 22 days, Stacy. And I'm like, oh, okay. So the caretaker. So I didn't show up. What I learned was I didn't show up for myself, Dawn. This was the part of when I started not showing up for myself. You had some verbal abuse. You can heal from this. Don't let this be your lot in life, darling, because you are worthy, valuable, and divine. But when people talk crazy to you like that, it's hard. Speaking of hard, hey, Hard Rock, how are you? Good morning. It's okay to be late. Better late than never. Okay. So we're talking about the different ways. I don't know if you're familiar with the ACE test. So we're talking about the ACE test and how this childhood trauma can develop into adulthood, how we're still working from the survival skills. And once we can start healing and recognizing our survival skills, we can turn it into tangible tools because we learn certain behaviors to be accepted, how to survive. And so we're talking about the different characters that we may take on, the roles that we may take on. And so I've talked about already one of the roles I started with. This is why I have notes so I can come back. And we talked about, asking ourselves what survival skills we're using today. Am I the peacemaker? Which that means neglecting ourselves kind of, because peacemakers, you learn to avoid conflict to stay safe. I was afraid of conflict and confrontation. And so the peacemaker, you learn to avoid conflict to stay safe. The adult patterns, how you may be acting as an adult. So this is a child, what you learned. The adult pattern is fear of confrontation, over apologizing, suppressing needs, keeping the peace at your own expense. And, you may struggle with boundaries because conflict once felt dangerous. We didn't learn boundaries. Those things came like the 70s and 80s. And if our parents didn't get to learn them, then we didn't get to learn them. So we're never too old and it's never too late. I got to learn boundaries and I'm glad that I did. And a lot of those boundaries that I learned are with myself. Boundaries are not peeling out in the driveway. Boundaries are not, shooting out cuss words, flipping people off. It's not going into flight, fight, and freeze. Thanks, John London. Those aren't boundaries. Boundaries are for us to be able to find ourselves and be able to say what we need to say to protect ourselves, not react to protect ourselves, but to be able to say, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, this hurt my feelings when you said this. You can learn boundaries, Don. I have faith that you can learn boundaries. So the perfectionist, learned making mistakes were unsafe. So they go into overthinking, high anxiety, fear of failure, people pleasing through achievement, and a harsh inner critic. You may believe your worth is tied to performance. I did not block you, Rodolfo. I just don't know that I'm talking on the same thing you're talking about today. The rebel, which we just finished. That was what, I played a character. I played a role in all of this. And being able to say that is empowering. I played a role. That's me being able to be honest with myself, being honest with myself. Because I was lying to myself when I thought I wasn't good enough. That's a lie. That's a lie. So the rebel, you learn to control felt suffocating or unsafe. I'm not dealing with this. Okay. You learn that control felt unsafe. Hi, Naranja. I have not watched any new movies. So we may have problems with authority issues now. Sometimes when we were a scared child, we have a problem with authority issues. If you're, I have videos about, people treating adults like children, as you may be giving another adult your power. I left a job a while back because when I told them that this made me sad, they said, well, I suggest if this makes you sad that you do this. That's gaslighting, y'all. That is gaslighting when people don't recognize your feelings. And that's how we learn to shut our feelings down, is when people tell us how to feel instead of letting us express them. I don't hate anybody, Rodolfo. There is no ageism. I don't know if you've talked to me about what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being chubby, and I'm not even sure what you're referring to. And I told you there's somebody for everybody. If when you remarked that you were afraid you wouldn't get somebody. The caretaker. So the caretaker learned to monitor others and meet their needs. That's a good observation, Naranja. I can't disagree with that, but I think that's a good observation. You were micromanaged at work. It was turning that way for me when I first started my last job that I had. We were all co-creating and creating something that was really valuable and good. And then as time went on, what I signed on for in that job changed. It morphed, and I felt like that I was going to be selling my soul if I stayed, because it just wasn't aligned with me. So I decided to go. Now then they started talking bad about me because I wouldn't do what they wanted me to do. And so sometimes we're not going to do what people want us to do, and they're going to talk bad about us. So what? I'm not giving them my power. They don't have my power. I wish they would have paid me. Anyway, the caretaker. You learn to monitor others and meet their needs. The adult patterns. John London, I got narcissistic, all abused at work. I quit after. I know, John. The struggle is, that was the first time I had a narcissistic job and dealt with these unethical things. It's like there was so much unethical things going on. And it's like, that's when you know you're selling your soul, when you see this stuff happening and you still stay, because I was getting paid while other people weren't getting paid. And that feels like you're like a survivor, right? Like a abuse survivor, where you're watching these things happen. It's survivor's guilt. You're watching these things happen, and I couldn't just watch these things happen, and I wasn't allowed to say anything, because if I said something, then I was automatically going to get fired. I chose to resign and then got fired for resigning because I wouldn't sign papers. But it was good while it was, and then it was bad when it wasn't, right? That's the way life is things are good until they're not, and they're bad until they're not. And so I know a lot of us are going through what would be perceived bad things with financial, the economy, and all of this stuff, but it will change. It always does. It does. My day's going good, Bentrix. John London. I was hard to beat because I made it very clear to management about everything and how it made me feel. Sometimes they're committed to misunderstanding you, though, aren't they, John London? I didn't even feel safe telling how I felt in the end. I did not. I just had to go because, when I said this makes me sad or this, they weren't trying to understand me. They were not trying to accommodate me. They had their mission, and that's the way people will be, y'all. And we may want to blame people and feel like they're a villain. And I know that it's not comfortable at all. But I'm proud of you for taking the choice to leave John London, because that's what I had to take the choice to do. 100% we can change what we can control and accept what we can't. Absolutely. Well said. I'm going to highlight that one. Hold on. Like what? Pin message. There we go. I just learned how to do that, y'all. You're welcome, Matt. Thank you for being here today. I'm glad that advice was helpful the other day. So today we're talking about the roles that we tend to play when we feel unsafe, growing up in an unsafe environment, which became our survival skills, which may not work for us as adults. So we've talked about the caretaker, I just finished with that, the rebel and the perfectionist. These are things that it causes, when we bend ourselves into a pretzel. And sometimes it started with our origin at home. Sometimes it started at school, trying to hide from bullies. Sometimes it started in a partnership. We're never too old, and it's never too late to change. Like John London says, we can change what we couldn't. Loose lips sink ships. Yep. When the boss is friends with the HR, it's losing battle. Naraja, I kept trying to get them to hire an HR department when I was seeing this crazy stuff going on. I was like, we need an HR department. And I even interviewed somebody for the HR department, but they chose not to have one. So thank you. I am very proud of myself for how strong I can be when I stand up for myself. Absolutely. Absolutely. Rodolfo, I think I'm all of those, but mostly not rebel. Well, I bent myself into a pretzel, and I was what people wanted me to be so that I could be accepted, right? But I finally was able to embrace those parts of me that maybe were hard to see. But I couldn't change without embracing those parts of myself, because nobody wants to say that they're not being themselves with a world that runs around saying they fake. Well, sometimes I was fake to myself. When I think that when I'm trying to prove something to somebody else that I'm good enough, it doesn't make me feel good enough. That's not what it did. Proving things didn't make me feel good enough. I had to embody it to empower myself. See? The perfectionist, the rebel, The caretaker. Caretaker, I don't think I finished the patterns. You learn to monitor others and meet their needs as a caretaker. And so the adult patterns is codependency, rescuing, emotional exhaustion, hyper awareness of others' moods, neglecting your own needs, and you may feel responsible for everyone. Don, that's you too. Naranja, people pleasing is the role that you think you are. Yeah, I used to be a people pleaser too, and I turned into a doormat. And that's how I discovered my codependency is, I had a boyfriend that his mom told me, Stacy, quit being a doormat. And so then she told me I was codependent, and I just blew it off because I didn't like that word. We don't like those words, do we? Codependent, narcissistic, and all of those. And I had to realize that I had those tendencies into me. I get avoidant personality real bad, 5 times the standard evaluation of the traits of avoidant personality. Here's the thing, is we're never too old and it's never too late to change. Just all that calls for is healing, and you're not weak because you're healing. Because I don't, like I said, we don't talk about religion, but in most of the faiths, there is a healing process or an awakening or something like this, and whatever it is. The senior ganged up on me with HR, and if it wasn't for the boss's son, I wouldn't have stayed so long. I felt a huge weight off my back. I know, right? Yeah, because I made good money at my last job, but when I left, I had to start all over, and it's hard starting all over. And I'm not young as I used to be, you know. So it is hard starting over, but it's not impossible. So I stay focused on the things that I want, not get afraid of, Stacy, you're too old. Stacy, it's too late, because that's not true. This is what I mean about getting in alignment with ourselves and not trying to be someone else, because that's not true. I focus on the things that I want and the people that I've seen do the hard things, not people that are complaining, about, entitled. We have a lot of entitlement. I self sabotage friendships when things go well. Part of me does not trust I deserve them, and I'm a burden to them. Thank you so much, Naranja, for your honesty, because a lot of people do that. And that's making stuff up, Naranja. I used to make stuff up too. And that's the thing, is that creativity, when we understand what we think is real, is a part of creativity too. But then we'll have the wisdom to know the difference, like John London was saying earlier. The wisdom to know the difference, it begins in me. Am I making this story up? Because when we're a child and we feel rejected, or we feel neglected, or we feel like we don't matter, we feel like we're not enough, or we feel and we don't get these feelings met, right? Then we'll make a story up, because it was your right here on this earth to be expressive. But sometimes we just shut down. And I think that it's our life's journey to learn how to express ourselves, because those that express themselves are the ones that I model, the ones that I look for, yep, our HR was in with the manager. She fancied him. That goes on. I know, y'all. I know that does go on. You're the same, Naranja, except I'm the bad dude with the bad friends. No debate there, sadly. Objectively, not so good. Yeah, because that's a protective mechanism too, right? Pizza on pizza. Thank you for being honest, because that's a protective mechanism. Avoidant is a protective mechanism. And so being able to look, the solution is being able to look, why do I feel I need to protect myself? What am I protecting myself from? Because chances are you're not, yeah, that is a bird flying around. Chances are you're not protecting yourself from what happened today. See, this is why as a coach, we track back to, when did this start becoming your reality? Because we think that that's our reality because of something that happened in the past. Like I said, what happened to you? So we'll think that that's our reality today, but we can change our reality. It's going to take time, because we didn't get this way overnight. It just takes time. So when you are that caretaker, sometimes we neglect our own needs. We don't consider ourselves. We have to learn to consider ourselves. When they're saying you can't give from an empty cup. Well, thank you, Pizza and Pizza, for subscribing. I appreciate that. If any of y'all find this content, in alignment with you, please subscribe if you feel like it will help somebody else. Well, thank you. If you feel like it will help somebody else, then please share. Thank you. I appreciate all of you who subscribe and who are here and who are watching, because you're choosing to feed an algorithm that will put you more in touch with yourself. I hope that was my intention I set this morning, is that this is going to help you get to know yourself. Monjuro journey with Pam. I think older counselors and coaches are best because they have wisdom and life experiences that a young grad doesn't have yet. Thank you so much, darling. I appreciate that. Yes. We have a lot of experience and everything. And I'm just hoping that what I say can help other people to shape. Because if we would have known different, we would have done different. And this is what I keep trying to tell people. You're not stupid. You're not lacking anywhere. And you're not, you know, lazy. A lot of times we're just afraid. We're in that flat, fight, and freeze and don't even know it. That flight could be that avoidant. The fight can be the avoidant. The freeze is usually the anxious one, and sometimes they can be going into fight. I'm learning so much and hearing what I know in a new and different way. That's my goal, John London. Thank you so much for sharing that. Don, I think children should be taught in high school about, yes, I do believe they should be taught about that bullying and things like that. Things just get skimmed over. Teach people how you want to be treated is what they say. And then people are sorely disappointed when they learn that not everybody's learning that. I am grateful that people are learning more about what happens at home. You know, is when children are growing up with fussing and fighting at home, their systems may be dysregulated and fragmented. I know for me, I had fussing and fighting at home. And so I sometimes would be at school and they may call it ADD, ADHD. I'm not clinically with that. Neither was my son. I kept trying to, he was hyper and he didn't focus, but he didn't have that. His teachers told me it doesn't matter if you do have it, you know, but a lot of times we just don't focus. We have a problem focusing when we're worried about what's going to happen when we get home. So some of us learn to play the role of the achiever. We learned success brought safety, approval, or attention. But my last psychiatrist was a dude, I think. Okay, well, I'm told a lot of times, usually psychiatrists, I think, they really write prescriptions a lot, right, Rodolfo? And sometimes we do have chemical imbalances and need to see a psychiatrist. But I think that's mostly there. Psychologists have gone to school, like Pam said, and they have this book knowledge, and they know a lot about the science too. And I learn a lot about science too, but I haven't gone to college for psychology. But I have a lot of experience and a lot of practical knowledge. So I try to share that. Advices or confessions of the wise. Awesome suggestions too, right? So I like that, Naranja. And I have been told, I've had people tell me that they, you know, from LA, I had a guy tell me, he says, I went to see many psychologists in LA and that sometimes paid $500 a pop to see them. And he said that I helped him a lot more than they did, you know, because I don't just sit and listen with people. We ask questions because sometimes we didn't learn the answers to questions because we weren't asked the questions, you know, and when we learned to be seen and not heard, we didn't learn how to express ourselves. And so sometimes we need someone to ask us questions, but somebody safe to ask us questions. Because a lot of times, if y'all are like I was, when people asked me questions, I felt like they thought I was stupid because that was my fear, was that I was stupid, you know, from the teachers telling me put my thinking cap on in front of the whole class and telling me I ran like hot and cold water. I had decided I was stupid. That was something made up because then when I got to high school, there was one teacher who recognized, he recognized because I skipped school a lot in high school. And it was my art teacher. And he said, Stacy, it's often the ones who suffered the most that have the most wisdom. Thank you, John London. Yes, Naranja. Even if the schools teach bully prevention, the bully kids are the whole group. This is why we have to address what happens at home. I played many characters. I was a bully in elementary school, and I didn't know I was a bully because I was practicing what I saw at home. And what I saw at home was parents that fought, cussed. That, you know, there would be this fight, and, you know, it would be physical. And then one would load us kids up in the car, and then, you know, somebody would be running out there yelling or something like that, and we'd be peeling out in the driveway. We would leave, but then we would come back. So my safety signal got mixed messages because I thought, oh, we're unsafe when we're peeling out the driveway. And then when we pulled back up, I'd be like, oh, we're safe. Then we're unsafe. Then we're safe. This is what I talk about fragmentation and dysregulation. Because we quit breathing because it's like, you never know when these things are going to happen, right? So we start getting prepared. The problem is our flat, fat, and free central nervous system doesn't know the difference in adulthood. And since it was our reality in the past, we think it's always going to be that way until we change. Thank you so much, John London. What a compliment. Thank you. He says he thinks I'm probably the secret genius, Naranja, that one teacher. Thank you, Naranja. Y'all are so sweet. All right. Positive, negative reinforcement is taught in homes first. Yeah. Yeah, we don't know, you know. They didn't know any better. They would have done better. They didn't know any better. But it still doesn't mean that it didn't happen, you know. Don, what was your favorite subject at school, if you don't mind me asking? I think for a while it was American history or history. I loved any kind of history because I wanted to know why things happen. That's one of the gifts that makes me a good coach today is I like tracking things. Not that I remember history anymore because I can't tell you what I learned in history. Yours was biology, Lazarus Bender. So, but I think it was probably history because I wanted to know why we're where we're at right now. I didn't know how to embody it yet in me. See, this would be cool, like you were saying, if they taught in schools, Don, because how we can embody this stuff within ourselves. We're taught in English, so what, when, where, how, and why on the piece of paper. We're taught in biology what is going on with our body on the piece of paper, but we're not taught in practicality what is going on with our body. I did have a teacher in art. I loved art too. And I had a teacher in art that he finally said to me in high school because I skipped a lot and I was smart. Like I could skip, like I said, and then go into a class and slay something because at that time I had a good memory. I hadn't killed all my brain cells at 14, right? So I hadn't killed all my brain cells at 14. So I would I would skip school, then go into a class, and they would think I was going to be a dunce and not know. And, but I would get up there and I would know. So my art teacher says, Stacy, a teacher and I were talking about you the other day. And he said, and, you're really smart, but you just don't apply yourself. And he said, is everything okay at home? And do you think I told him, well, not really. My mom and dad fight all the time. Sometimes I skip school and hide in a camper and listen to my mom and dad fight. And sometimes, because I was a protector. That was a role that I learned to be because I'm the oldest of three. So I was the protector. So, yeah, Don, I loved history. Henry VIII and English biology. Yes, very cool. Rod Daffo, that's good. History is very good for tracking. And so when we can figure out where we've been, we can figure out where we're going, where we want to go. The problem is a lot of our own history. When we don't learn our own, we tend to think that's who we are and who we're destined to be. But that's why I love tracking because I get to look back last year. I'm not the person I was last year. I certainly have a lot more peace. I may not have the money, but I have a lot more peace than I had last year. And so, then 2 years ago, I had the money and I was pretty happy, and so forth and so on 10 years ago. So this is my evidence that even though I had a rough year this year, I'm going to have a good year because once we can look at this, it's not forever. See, as children growing up in trauma, we think this is going to last forever. I was awful, Rodolfo says. I was susceptible to being a follower. I got involved with bullying because my best friend was a bully. I finally broke up with my best friend recently after nearly 50 years. Good for you, Rodolfo. I bet your central nervous system feels better because that, again, is like selling our soul, right? I get it. I was mean in elementary school. And I was even a little mean in middle school because I wanted to take the attention off my own inadequacies, right? That's what a bully does, is they're trying to take the attention off of their own inadequacies. That's also narcissism. And I did that. See, this is what I mean by we can't save our face and our ass at the same time. We have guilt that we carry for that. I had guilt that I carried for that, you know, and I had to heal that within me. And it's not easy, but I can't keep hiding from myself by, becoming someone else by doing these other things. You can't either. Rodolfo, he was a very charismatic, but wow, mean as still as an adult. I get it. I hated math too, Don. My math was not math then. That was my worst subject. That's where they would tell me, put your thinking cap on. Because it's about solving those problems. And I didn't know how to solve some problems. I'm better at math now. I can do basic math, but give me a formula and I'm like, oh, hell no. No. Lazarus, my grades were always low despite being a smart ass. Do you think you were doing it for attention? Did your parents? No, my parents didn't need to apologize for anything. They really didn't. They taught me things, and I think that they both did living amends because they didn't know. And when we trust something, I don't tell you all who to trust or how to trust or anything like that, but I do have a higher power. And my higher power is so magnificent. My higher power is the electromagnetic field. My higher power is the quantum field. My higher power is everything, and so these things were intentionally, they were for me to grow. I can feel like a victim and like they owe me an apology and that they're guilty, but this is why I talk about not going into this victim villain to grow out of that. I was a victim. I felt like I was a victim, but I had to realize when I'm talking about these things here, when we talked about bullying, that I was a villain too. And see, this is how we know that nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same, y'all. And when we get to be in charge of that evolution, then we are empowered. And it's not that we can control everything, because like I told y'all in codependency, there's my business, God's business, and somebody else's business. I cannot control anybody else's business. But what I can do is keep myself in peace and harmony. It's not saying I do it 100%. I can get salty about things sometimes, but I remember what's real and that isn't real. I really thought I was a victim for a very long time. But I got some certain strengths. I got some tangible tools from those survival skills. So they really didn't need to apologize. And they both did a living amends, because that's the way the world evolves, is that like this job that I didn't get the money from, they're not my source in my vital life force. They are not my source. I don't have to, I'm not happy about that. And especially, now I'm hearing that other people went through that too. It's not just me, you see. There's other people owed a lot more than I'm owed, you know. And so sometimes this happens for our highest growth. Now I know what this kind of atmosphere is, and I won't be falling prey to it, you see. So I learned something. As long as we learn something, then it's never in vain. And it gives us a gift. It gives us a gift. I have a gift, you know. Thank you, John London. I appreciate that. Don Henry the Eighth, the way he treated his wives. Yes, yes. That's why we have so much of that, and everything. Yeah. A lot of people think you have to be that way to be powerful. It's a false power. It's a false ego. It's a false, esteem. But some people will never realize that. Thanks, Ketan Patel. How are you today? Stacy Complete. I'm not doing any of that, darling. Lazarus. John London. John London. Awesome. That's great. All right, Naranja, we easily tear others down to make us look big, or could build ourselves from the ground up the hard way. Most pick the first. Exactly. Exactly. We will do that until we know better. And to realize that we are human and we can learn to know better, we will quit defending ourselves for the other part, for when we weren't. We learned to accept ourselves, accept that this was not the best and brightest part of myself. What can I do that's better? Just grow from here. We don't have to keep living in the past regret. We don't have to stay living there. We don't need to forget it because we don't want to return to it. Sometimes when we forget things, we return to it. And I don't want to go back to the things that I did in some of the past. We stay in recovery, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it, because as long as we remember it, we won't go back, right? I do believe in karma. Thank you, Naranja. Hurt people. Absolutely, Don Woodland. And healing people help others to heal too. And that's what I try to do. My glove, greetings. Greetings. Thank you for joining us on your break. Rodolfo, I don't need apologies. Just treat me nice. My mom tried hard to make amends, but never words till a final letter she wrote. And I found it after she died. Her words hurt my soul. She did. Yes, they do the best they can, just like we do. I haven't always showed up in my best light, and I do the best that I can, and so we all do. And sometimes when we look back 10 years, we just see where we can re-navigate, and thank God that we didn't stay there, right? Mr. Samenver, it's good to see you this morning. So, my glove, I'm working on positive stuff. Horizon appears positive. Yes. Even in the time that I've gotten to see you on here, my glove, I remember when you were looking for that job. And look, you got that job now. I'm so proud of you. John London. Oh, Naranja, what do you think loneliness epidemic this I don't know. I haven't experienced it like they're experiencing it. I'm glad that I didn't have to grow through COVID and that I didn't have to do these things and that there wasn't a screen. When I was a little kid, we went to Disney World and there was this I don't know, remember if it was Magic Mountain or Epcot Center or if they're even the same. I can't remember. I haven't been to Disney World in a long and any of that. Good morning, Binod. So I was probably 11, 12 years old, and you rode this little tram thing like the airport, the little thing, and you went by, there was this glassed in area where this girl was laying on a bed looking at a computer screen. And it wasn't even there right now, it wasn't there at that time, but it's here now. It's the reality today. I'm very lonely, Naranja. I get you. Yes. I'm alone a lot, but I don't feel lonely. And part of that's because of you great people. I'm so grateful for this community and getting on here and being able to share something to help you stay navigated on what you do want. We got so many avenues, so many places you can go on here that are going down the rabbit hole of the doom. But you're choosing to grow your soul because all this other stuff's going to happen, but you have a soul. And so that's what I try to help you remember who you are. What if you did come here on a mission to grow through all this stuff, just like the video games, just like some of the movies we watch? What if you come here on a mission to grow through these things? The phone addiction for me that makes you alone? Yes. Get you some fresh air and sunshine, Naranja. Just take a walk around the block, something like that. Sometimes getting out because we can. This is how you're going to end up living in the matrix when we get in too much in that phone. I've been lonely for a long time, afraid of getting close to people. John London. Magdlove had to go? Okay. Bye, Magdlove. Thank you for joining. Yeah. For me, I pray. I know not everybody's praying, people, but I do pray. And one time I remember being very lonely. I had a breakup where it seemed like most of our friends went to, that he had most of our friends. And so when I prayed, I was so lonely and I prayed. And you know what? Then I had more things to do than I knew what to do. So I do believe in that energy of prayer. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. You can be in a crowded room and still feel lonely. But the thing is I love that saying that I used to walk into a room and wonder if they would like me. And I can honestly say that now I walk into a room and wonder if I like them because that's what I do is I go navigate towards those that seem open because we do carry an energy with us. And when we've done some healing work, that fear is not in my body language. I had a body language when I was afraid. And then now I have a different kind of body language. When I walk into a room, my shoulders are up, my head's up, and I belong there. There's nowhere I don't belong except maybe in places that are kind of seedy, So, does my prayers get answered? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And maybe, I always pray for the highest good, for all people. And so sometimes, like I say, it's not always all about me. My prayers don't get answered when I want them to get answered. I can tell you that right now. I wanted them answered yesterday. and they don't get answered in my time. They get answered in divine time, but sometimes they get answered better than I could have even imagined. I went one time because when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be an actress. And sometimes when we don't stay in that longing, we'll get to experience something. And when I got to be a grown woman and I started feeling better about myself and had done some of this healing work, I got on this site and it was, exploretalent.com, and I was able to get to audition for parts. I auditioned for a part that was totally not my part. I'm a Texan and I'm not racist. And so, but they needed somebody to play a part of a New Yorker who was racist. So I auditioned for that part because I thought, I'm going to try to do this. And I did. And you know what? I didn't get that part because that part's not for me. But guess what? They gave me a part because they liked me. They gave me a part as a hippie in a safe house because it was for the Black Panthers. And so they gave me a part as a hippie in a safe house. And that's the role that I felt comfortable playing. So it's like getting in where you fit in. So I was able to do that. And after seeing how that's done, is I didn't want to be an actress anymore because I'm not, that's not my thing. But when I was a little girl, I thought it was because I admired those people. I still admire those people. Thank you, John London. So it just is when we're willing to go into this, because when I'm talking about praying, sometimes I have to say, breathe, pray, and say, I don't know. Because for me, I can be obsessing over the catastrophizing or obsessing over another person's business that is not my business. And so if I start obsessing on something, I breathe. Because if I get into obsessive mode, I quit breathing. I'll even catch myself not breathing if I start obsessing. And then I have to pray and say, my prayer is just simply, please take this obsession away. Whatever it is that I'm obsessing my thoughts over that I don't need to be obsessing over, that's not serving me. And then say, I don't know. And I think that's how we get magic, mystery, and miracles. That's what I think. That's what has been evident for me anyway. Naranja, there are Ayurvedic personality types where the Vala wind type people make many friends easily, but doesn't glue to one or two people, no besties. Yeah, I'm about to study that too, a little bit of the Ayurvedic beliefs. I know a little bit about a lot of things, so I'm going to study that more too. Naranja, I don't know. I just get into personality types I see on the internet. That's like different things do different personality types. Does most people career match your dream career? I think only few people career match their dream career. I don't know what the percentage is, Bernard. I really don't. I know for me and a lot of people, and I may have to do it again. I'm going to look for jobs today to supplement my income with my coaching business because a lot of people just can't afford coaching right now. And that's why I get on here, is because I know that there's people struggling who can't afford coaching right now. But I still need to make a living too, and that's what I do for a living. But with people, I have a workshop, and people are struggling right now. That's just the way that it is, and so I may have to take on another job to supplement my income for a period. Maybe not forever, but just for a bit. So acting would make me nervous. Yeah, acting wasn't good for me. I don't know. I still wouldn't mind playing a small role, but I no longer live in Texas. But Texas has become a big place, not full time. So Texas has become a big place for acting now, and being what do they call the people on the side? Robbie, oh, John London did make it. I had to go. Oh, okay. Yes, yeah, John London's here. Yay. So Don, it's hard even to get a job nowadays. I know. I may have a struggle too. But at least putting the effort forth. I've learned how just even actions sometimes raise a vibration. And because we live in an electromagnetic field, we live in a quantum field. The quantum field is with my higher good being focused on what I do want instead of worrying about what I don't want. So that's what I need to put out into the quantum field, because that's what's hearing me. When I put out those prayers, that's what's hearing me. The electromagnetic field is the actions down here. What am I doing down here? Guiding my footsteps, because there's a positive and a negative for everything in this electromagnetic field. Most of us will feel great as long as things are going positively. But when things start going negatively, we start taking it on as our identity. And that's not the truth, because everything's good until it's not, and it's bad until it's not. But sometimes we need to learn to heal from these survival skills so that we can be living in the reality today. That's why we're going to breathe here pretty soon, because yeah, that keeps going up and down on people who are watching, because I've been over an hour now, y'all. Yeah, coaching businesses are a dozen out there. Keep hustling hard, Stacy. You'll make it. Thank you, Naranja. I do believe that. I do. I do. Even the smallest actions can be so significant. Thank you for coming on YouTube. Life changing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this is my intention, is to help people. And so I know that there's some people who are afraid, like I was afraid, and I just want you to feel comfortable in your own skin, even for whatever time I'm on here, but it will help you, because some of these old tapes in our head are stuck there. And if you don't feed your head something else, they're going to stay stuck there. So I know that. I know. Robbie, I like reading his interesting comments. I'll go back and check them out. Yeah, he does have some good stuff. I've pinned one. I've learned how to pin comments. So we're going to talk about the invisible one now. The roles that we're talking about, the roles that we play, right? There's only 2 of you left. So we're going to start coming down with this and finishing up, okay? So the roles that we play is, we talked about the caretaker, now the achiever. You learned success brought safety, approval, or attention. So adult patterns in this are work addiction, burnout, overfunctioning, inability to rest, identity tied to an accomplishment. Because a lot of people, I work with people too, because I do have some clients, and I work with some too that have lost their jobs, and their identity was their job, and now they feel worthless not having a job. I think sometimes when people retire, they feel that way too. And when we understand that is not who we are, but if we've lived our whole life trying to perform to mean something, then it can be a problem. That's why I tell y'all, get outside, because life is meant to be experienced, not just we'll do it when. So the invisible one. Some people learn to be the invisible one, was a role that they learned to play in the family or in relationships. So the invisible one, you learn to keep disappearing that it kept you safe. The adult patterns of that is fear of visibility, difficulty speaking up, minimizing yourself, social anxiety, and tolerating being overlooked. This is a lot of times when people can't develop their resumes or don't feel like they're doing their resumes. Good morning, Jeremy Johnson. So when they feel like they're not enough, right? So you may have learned that taking up space was risky. We're either not enough or too much, those extremes, right? Some people learn how to be the comedian. Now, I work with couples too, and I can tell you that the majority of the men that I work with in couples, they learn to be the comedian to cover up the pain of enduring their childhood, because boys were taught, don't cry, don't be a sissy, don't whatever. That's not true. But a lot of that was that masculine, that their dads taught them that, because their dads before that taught them that. And we talked about that a few weeks ago. That's not true. So the guys learn to be a comedian. They learn to be sarcastic, some of the men, and we're getting down to their feelings now. So they learned humor to diffuse pain or tension. Jim Carrey did this. He's famous. He tells people he did this. So the adult patterns are deflecting vulnerability with humor, discomfort with seriousness, avoiding deeper emotional expression, and you may know how to make others comfortable while feeling unseen yourself. Now, I'm not saying that strictly with men, because I think that can have that with women too, that they do this. I know that my mom used to say, you got to laugh to keep from crying. So here's an important question for you all. We're about to get into the breathing today and finish this up. But the important question is does peace feel safe to you or uncomfortable? Getting to know yourself. Does peace feel safe or uncomfortable? A lot of people who spent their lives waiting for the other shoe to fall and are still waiting for the other shoe to fall will be waiting for the other shoe to fall. Thanks, Naranja. I'm so glad you were able to relate. And I hope that this has been helpful for you today to be able to create your own role in life, to be able to take the tools from the roles that you had because you've proved that you are capable. You've proved a lot of things, but you didn't own that. We owned that I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this. But when we get outside or we get to do something, and it's like, I get to do this. And that creates that gratitude. And so when we do the breathing, we'll be breathing in gratitude because you have skills, you have tools, and being able, the wisdom to know the difference. I played the comedian role in a few groups. Yep, a lot of us do. I used to pretend my feelings didn't matter, that I wasn't hurt by anybody. I was tough. John London, I feel that on some level that when there's peace, it's like what's gonna happen next. Thing is that the breathing that we're about to do helps us to live in the moment. I totally get that. I totally get it, you know. And sometimes I can wake up in the morning and feel like, I hope this happens today, or I hope that happens today. And I just really have to get in the day. I have to learn that that's not serving me. Hope is good. But, you know, doing the next right thing, doing the next right thing. Because sometimes we can go in that flat, fat freeze, that freeze of just like, I don't know, you know, right? So, yeah, let's talk about that. Does peace feel safe to you or uncomfortable? This is a powerful question because many people grew up in chaos. They don't automatically feel safe in peace if we had chaos. Thanks, Robbie. Kitan, thank you. And then, so peace can feel unfamiliar. Stillness can feel suspicious, and healthy relationships can feel boring. I know a lot of people, and I was included back in my youth. Back in my youth, I used to think passion was these relationships that were up and down and unsteady. And that emotional unavailability of me trying to figure out how they feel because they're so bold and dark and that, you know, they have feelings they can't express. And you see that they thing. I had feelings I couldn't express, y'all. But I was projecting. That's when we learn what the projector. Do we want a projector or a reflector? Getting in alignment with what we want is our reflection. But the projection sometimes is from what's coming in with us. Bye, Robbie. Have a good one. Thank you, John. All right. So this is not because we want dysfunction. That's not what we want. That's what we got used to. Emotional unavailability is a hard thing to deal with. It sure is, John London. It sure is. But the thing is when we learn what it is, then we know. Like when I'm navigating relationships now, I can tell when there's emotional unavailability. I can tell when the representative is showing up. You know what I mean? Because I've learned what it looks like. See, before I didn't know what it looked like. I had made a story up that emotional unavailability meant that this was a strong man, right? Because men were taught to be that way. Some men were actually taught to be emotionally unavailable. And maybe some women, because of their pain, are emotionally unavailable. Whoever they are, it was pain and it produced emotional unavailability. And it is a hard thing to deal with. Don, peace felt comfortable and uncomfortable to me. That's the way it is, right? Hey, geez, jaded wasteds. I have been all right. How are you? Naranja. Curious to hear your love stories back in the day. Oh, goodness. I talk about them sometimes, Naranja. I do. Not today. That's a lot of my exes, Don. A lot of my exes in Texas. Emotional unavailability. John, I totally understand. Awesome. All right. So it's not because we want dysfunction is why peace feels unfamiliar. It's because your nervous system was trained in familiarity and not safety. So sometimes we do not sabotage because we want pain. We sabotage because being familiar with what is safe feels unfamiliar. Safety feels unfamiliar, even when familiar hurts. That's our expectation. See, when we learn to get rid of those expectations. And that's what I had to learn in my codependency, was to get rid of the expectations. Then I could be in touch with my intuition, what's really happening. My expectations was what I was making up to happen. Don, never get a hug or a peck on the cheek. Ah, that is sad. That is sad. You deserve that. I hope that you're going to find your way out of that relationship, because that's not serving. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's comfortable. Trauma shows up as self-talk. Listen to your inner dialogue. Did you hear, I'm too much? I'm not enough? Don't mess up. Don't upset anybody. Stay small. Do more to be worthy. Those could be some of the tapes that you don't even realize are playing. Often those are internalized childhood messages that are still running in adulthood. We may not notice them, but we may be performing, hoping. See, that's where the hope is. I hope I get this right. I hope. I'm trying. Sometimes it can feel like we're swimming upstream, right? So the healing is recognizing when survival skill is no longer serving you. It's learning boundaries without guilt, rest without shame, emotional expression without fear, peace without suspicion, and self-worth without performance. Healing is not becoming somebody else. It's remembering yourself underneath all those survival patterns. So we're going to leave with that. So I want you, to just think about a few things today before we breathe in. I would wonder if there was a lack of intimacy. Why would they not want that or feel comfortable with it? I know. It's what happens, I think, is for our highest growth. If I have a source and these things are happening because I've had to process these things. If I have a source and these things are happening, then I have to believe that they're happening for a reason. And it's for me to learn from them. It's not to punish me. I'm not being punished. You're not being punished for anything. This is something that we're getting to learn from. It's a catalyst for our growth. It has got you where you are today, and it has made you a stronger person. You're not a bad person. You're not unworthy. You are worthy. You're all the opposite of those things, but maybe you haven't embraced those things. Notice that EM in the front of words. That's about being inside yourself. Embrace what's inside you. Empower. To embrace those things is to empower those things. It's about you. And maybe you learn to, consider others before yourself. I know that that's certainly taught. But they also tell you these contradicting things, like, that car peeling out the driveway and then coming back, as they tell you, you can't give from an empty cup. So life is full of paradoxes. And when we can accept that, we can accept things, but we'll also know what we need to change. We also know what we need to change, because it's not going to change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So this is where empowerment comes in, is I get to choose. I get to decide based on what I want. So that's what I try to get on here. That's the intention I set, because I had to get focused on what I want, because you're worthy. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be an adventure, but it builds self-esteem. That's what builds self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't just come to us. We build it. So I want you to think about that. What do you want? Do you want peace? Breathe in peace. I didn't set water over here by me. I've been talking for almost 2 hours, an hour and a half. So we're going to breathe in peace, breathe in gratitude, breathe in what serves you, breathe in your tangible tools, your strength, your power, and then release anything that makes you feel not good enough, that makes you feel lack, that makes you feel like this is going to last forever, because things rise and they fall, just like this breath we're taking in. So I want you to breathe in fully to your tummy. Let your shoulders rise, your heart open, your head up, and then just hold it for 4 counts if you can. This is called regulation. When you were a child, maybe you didn't learn how to regulate. You may say, I'm breathing every day, but I want you to breathe with me, as we all are sharing this air. And what if we were sending out healing vibes in this air? So then when we release, we're going to release slowly and gently. We want to be handled slowly and gently. We don't want to be abrupt. We don't want to have violence. Okay? Breathing slow is the key. Yes, Naranja. Thank you, John London. He says, everything I say is gold. I appreciate that, Don. I feel like I've got 3 Mount Everest to climb. Well, just for right now, Don, I want you to realize in this moment, you are okay. You've been sitting here, and I appreciate you so much for sitting here. I appreciate you so much for sharing and participating. I appreciate all of you for sharing and participating. Naranja, John London, Robbie, everyone who got to come in for a few minutes and then have to leave, Maglav and Pam. I want to thank you so much for choosing to, say hello, to be here, to participate. And I want you to know each one of you is worthy, valuable, and divine. So let's breathe it in. Let's breathe 5 times. And then you keep breathing, darlings. So let's take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. And release. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Just 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. And release. All right. I hope that you all felt safe. Focus on the steps you're climbing at, Don. You'll get over the 5 mountains easily. That's right. Because right this moment, you are safe. You are safe. Feeling calm. Good. Good. Thanks again, all you, for being here. If you need one-on-one coaching with me, then please feel free to look in the description. My email is there. If you want to be a part of the Unbound Self workshop that begins tomorrow, it's the last day you can join, then feel free to email me. And if you want, that's a 7-week workshop. And if you want to do the self-trust reset, that's an intensive. You meet with me 3 weeks out of the month and for 3 months. So, yeah. All right, Naranja, you have a good day too, and I look forward to seeing y'all Friday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, okay? All right. Y'all have a wonderful Wednesday, WINS, Shamrock, or Prayers, DAY, okay? All right. Thank you so much for being here. Much love and appreciation. Bye.